So I've been checking out, what's his name? Rich Cooper for a while, here and there, and I agree with a lot of what he has to say. Definitely his stance, as you could imagine, on what he likes to call the beer bug, right? We're more or less in agreement there. And there are things that he says that are very true. But there are a lot of hypocrisies, inconsistencies, pseudoscience, and just outright nonsense when it comes to someone like Rich Cooper and the Manosphere in general. Now maybe I'll check out some videos at some point and maybe try to respond, break down the arguments, maybe debunk some of this stuff. And it's interesting. I got an email the other day with regards to my response to Sam Harris and free will, right? And they said something along the lines of, maybe I didn't understand what they were saying exactly, but they seemed to have a problem with the fact that I would piece apart their argument and debunk every little detail of it, or certain little details, right? I would pause a lot and say, well, this is wrong and this is why. And then before they said too much again, I would say pause again and say, okay, well, this is wrong and this is why, right? They wanted me to, and again, this is how I'm interpreting what they said, to let the men talk, make the whole argument, and then respond to it, right? I mean, I I guess what's the point of listening to what they have to say, right? I could just make a video response summarizing and responding. Well, that's not what I did. But it seems to me like they had a problem with the fact that I would point out all these inconsistencies and nonsense and hypocrisies, right? Contradictions. While at the same time saying that, well, it's one cohesive argument. Like, let them make the argument before you respond to it. Well, hold on a minute. If you're saying it's one big cohesive argument, if I could just unglue one part of it, just one part of it, then it's no longer cohesive, right? Basically, any argument, and it doesn't have to be a formal one, but if there is an argument somewhere in something that a person is saying, it'll have premises and then a conclusion. I don't even have to wait for the conclusion. I could just debunk one premise. If the argument is supposed to be a cohesive one and I reject one premise on good grounds, that's it. It's done. But what I did with Sam Harris is I took most, if not all, of the premises and showed you why they're wrong. So how do you on the one hand say that it's a cohesive argument, let them get it out, when and then have a problem with me ungluing or just showing you that it doesn't cohere, it's incoherent, right? It didn't make any sense to me, this argument this person was making. And that's the best way to debunk an argument, is take one of the premises or a couple of premises or anything the person is saying that they're using to build the argument, and just show one contradiction in how they're building the argument, and that's it, right? That is the best way to debunk anybody, is just show a contradiction. Show that they're incoherent, they're not making any sense. What else do you need to do? So, when it comes to someone like Richard Cooper or the Manosphere, for example, they criticize women for, being promiscuous and wanting sex, while at the same time praising that in men. No, hold on a minute. How can you have men that are promiscuous without women that are promiscuous? Like, it just doesn't add up. How can you have one without the other, right? It's completely and utterly nonsensical and hypocritical. Or is it that it's just a few select alpha males that get to sleep with everybody, and then there's all these other males that raise your kids for you, and you sit there and you call them cuckolds and you put them down? That doesn't make any sense. How do you on the one hand tell men to go out there and get it, right? All men. Criticizing beta bucks for being that which they are, right? Telling them to not be that way, basically. Be alphas, right? Like as if everybody could be an alpha, and which doesn't even exist. It's a pseudoscientific, nonsensical bullshit. So yeah, it's just an utter hypocrisy. How can you have one without the other? You really can't, right? So on the one hand, for them to be, for all the alpha males to satisfy their alpha tendencies, whatever the hell that means, right? So spread their seed. Give me a break. You obviously need women to be willing to let you do that, right? But then when it comes to raising your daughter, right? Well, she should be a trad wife, I guess. I don't know. Or what should she be, right? Definitely not promiscuous. So while on the one hand you're telling men to go out there and get and be promiscuous, you're telling women not to. Like, how is that not a contradiction? But I'm not saying this is very conscious, but I get a very, very strong gay vibe from a lot of these Richard Cooper types. Very, very strong gay vibe. It and to me it seems that the logical conclusion of the worldview that they're pushing, right? Men sleeping around good, women sleeping around bad, right? Well, what are they pushing for, right? Whether they know it or not, like they're literally, no, not literally, but it would seem that the logical conclusion, if they were to get their way, right? Women be respecting themselves and not whoring, and men going out there and getting it. Well, I mean, yeah. What's the logical conclusion of that, right? More and more homosexuality out there. Maybe he's just a useful idiot, right? Maybe that's the goal of this agenda, however hidden, ultimately, right? Because it doesn't, the way he presents it doesn't make any sense, right? So, and there is a very, very like strong gay vibe you get from some of these dudes, like what's his face, Samuel something, whatever, the black dude that's like, you know, gets his nails did, probably has his eyebrows threaded and that type of stuff, right? Like these guys are little, little fruity, some of them, and just the way they like congregate together and pat each other on the back, and just they have these support groups for one another, right? How they talk about muscles and like it's. I'm not. Look, I'm not saying that these dudes are homosexuals. Some of them probably are, but Manosphere. I mean, come on, man. Like, right? They really are to a large degree rejecting women, right? Rejecting marriage, not entirely, but I'm kind of generalizing. Heterosexual marriage, right? They're rejecting that, or marriage in general, which is that's what it is, right? They're destroying, helping to destroy, whether they know it or not, the fabric of society as it's been for so many years. And they're pushing to have these, for men to get closer together, right? Have these support groups to, achieve excellence, take care of their bodies. And look, I'm not saying these things are wrong, but necessarily, but it's, I think it's a little bit exaggerated and it's a little bit too much. And you keep pushing for that. This is where it's headed, right? The logical conclusion. It just, to me, it just sounds like, a gay bathhouse, basically, where all these men are, comparing each other, measuring their size and looking at each other's pecs and not really letting women in anymore, and just talking about each other's excellence and how great and alpha they are, patting each other on the back. I mean, what is that going to lead to, right? I don't know. Just the whole thing is kind of gay. I'm serious. Like that's maybe not quite there yet, but it seems to be headed that direction, man. To me, anyway, that's what it seems like, because it doesn't make any sense, right? Then there are some other contradictions there, like, or things that just don't make any sense. Saying that all women are hypergamous, right? that all women, most women, want to just marry up in socioeconomic status, right? They want to marry or be with a man of a higher socioeconomic status. Well, I mean, if that's the case, and you're not necessarily in favor of marriage, why do you at the same time seem to fall into that trap and want to be of the higher socioeconomic status, right? Because when he talks about excellence, yeah, he's talking about taking care of yourself and being healthy, which, obviously I agree with. But he's also talking about just making money, money. It's very superficial, it's very materialistic, it's very economically based, as if, just being well off or having all your needs satisfied and then making sure your life had meaning, right? That you were maybe a productive member of society or you contributed in some way. That seems to be secondary or even lower on the scale of desirability or who or what you should be. There really seems to be this push for looking pretty and having lots of money and things, right? Moving up on the social ladder, the social scale, right? So if you're gonna criticize women for being hypergamous, that's not seen as a good thing generally for them, or something that these insidious women do that you should take advantage of, I suppose, or whatever. But if you're gonna point out that there's something wrong with that, right, or it's not advantageous, it's not good, basically, without really saying that is what they're insinuating. The evil woman that wants to marry up in social class, right? Then why do you fall into that trap and want to be that guy, right? That women desire. Or do you? Or are you doing it for all the other boys, right? To desire you. And then there's this kind of like weird dynamic. But back to hypergamy. I suppose I should have made a outline for this video. But these are just like rough ideas I have. I haven't really taken the time to parse them out and think about them too much. So maybe that'll come in other videos. But, if all women are hypergamous, for example, right? Then if that's our society, then it won't be long before all these so-called high-value men who you're telling them to not even want to marry or be very, very careful if they will. You're discouraging them from marriage, right? But even if that's the case and all women are hypergamous, I mean, eventually, because generally women are lower on the social scale than men, right? And in general, there are more people on the lower rungs of this ladder and fewer people up top. There's only a very, very small amount of women that will be able to marry up. Not only because there are so many more of them than men in the higher social classes, but also because those men in those social classes will probably try to marry someone that's more similar, whether it's, for a reason or a good reason or a bad reason or conscious or not, maybe they'll marry for love, but just the simple fact that these are the circles that they move around in, right? They're probably more likely to marry someone of similar social status or equal, right? So there are very, very, very few, relatively speaking, opportunities for women to marry up in social class, right? And as soon as all these men in the higher social class are taken, and I get it, it's a continuous process, right? But there simply just isn't. What are all the other women supposed to do, right? What are they supposed to do? Soon enough, there's not enough of these men to go around for these women. So this sort of thing doesn't really make sense, right? That this should be the primary goal or like the only thing that most women care about, I think he's putting, I'm not saying hypergamy doesn't happen, and I'm not saying that it's not conscious for a lot of women. Clearly it is. And there are a lot of gold diggers out there, no doubt about it. But it cannot be this sort of, evolutionary survival strategy, which is a whole bunch of other bullshit that these guys just, it's part of their pseudoscientific drivel for which they don't have any proof of. They just say these things, right? But it cannot be that which drives most women because, well, it just doesn't make sense. It's not possible for that to happen, right? And it just makes women seem like complete and utter gold diggers. Now, look, obviously there are benefits to marrying up in social class, and a lot of women do that or strive to do that, and it makes sense for them to do that. But it just makes women seem like shallow, and all of these guys' ideas about society make everybody seem like just this like pre-programmed robot that doesn't have much in the way of free will, right? Because what about marrying someone you just love, or marrying someone who makes you happy, marrying someone who is driven to do things that appeal to you that aren't necessarily based in materialism, right? Marrying someone on principle, or because they're good in bed, for whatever reason, right? Whatever number of reasons that any particular woman may have to want to be with the man, that doesn't necessarily have to do with social status. Now, obviously, that's a perk, right? And I'm not going to throw shade at anybody for wanting to do that, but obviously there has to be more to life than that, because that's just not feasible for most women to marry up. It's just not going to happen because of obvious reasons, as I already described. And it just makes all women seem like completely and utterly materialistic. Like there are nothing else that women look for in a mate. And it makes men, right, fall into that trap. Well, just and this is exactly what he says again, right? And promotes materialism and consumption and everything that's wrong with this world. Because that's what women want. So because you should marry them, you should just take advantage of them, I guess. I don't know. You should just score as much as possible. Become that sort of object of desire of these women, superficial desire, and then take advantage of them. I don't know. It's just so shallow and simplistic, and it makes us all into these like automatons that don't seem to have much free will or creativity or desires other than materialistic ones, right? Trust me, guys, there's like tons of women out there who don't care that much. Obviously, nobody wants a deadbeat, right? That they have to support. Like, let's keep it real, right? But she may have more money than you. She may make more money than you, and might see something in you that she may want. Like maybe she sees something about you that makes her believe that you will be a good father, right? Or whenever there's a problem, you're gonna solve it because that's you, right? Maybe she sees you as a protector, and whatever it may be. Maybe she just thinks you're funny, or not to get too vulgar, but I mean this does happen too. Like the shape and size of your dick is just right. You know what I mean? You rock her world for whatever reason, right? Sometimes that one thing, whatever it may be, is going to be so much more important than anything else, right? Maybe she wants to move out of the city and go have a homestead somewhere out in the wilderness or closer to nature, and those are your goals and aspirations too. Are you going to be rich? Are you going to be part of some higher social class if you do that? Not likely. But maybe that's what she wants. Maybe she just wants to be able to travel around the world, and that's your goal too. Do you really need a lot of money to travel all around the world? No, you don't. You actually don't. It makes it easier, but you know, if a woman is that, and she has a choice between some rich dude who's just working all the damn time chasing the dollar, right? Doesn't have time to do anything, and if he does travel, it's for work, right? He he's got all the money in the world to send her all over the world, go everywhere. But if she wants to go with him, or she wants to be able to travel with a mate, and she has a choice between that guy and someone who, got some money, some kind of a steady income, and the desire to want to go these places and the ability to go to these places, she will go with that guy and stay in, much cheaper hotel or whatever, maybe even a fucking tent. You know what I mean? Or rent a car or like a van or whatever, and just whatever. Stupid example, I suppose, but use your imagination, right? If she's more interested in just traveling around the world with the mate, right? Obviously, you need money to do that, and she has a choice between this rich dude who ain't going nowhere because he's so obsessed with money, and someone who has some money enough to do these things and the desire to do them, right? She's gonna give up some luxury to have meaning. Why wouldn't she, right? But then there might be other women who don't. So it's these guys. Look, they have to appear as experts, right? In order to grift, sell their product, and seminars, give advice, right? Have people pay them money to talk to them, basically, right? So they cannot allow for there to be too much human agency, too much variation, too much creativity, too much unknown, right? The world has to be very regimented, simple, easy to explain. Whatever they say has to be catchy, right? So they can hook and reel you in. They have to appear as if they were experts. They can't talk about in maybes, probablys, perhapses, right? The world cannot be full of possibilities. They have to build this algorithm, and there's two doors, let's say, at the start, and choose one, right? You're at the fork in the road, and it's not like you're in the center with roads going out all the way around you. There's just a fork in the road. You choose this one. Okay, do you get to another fork in the road, and you go in? It has to be that sort of an algorithm. It has to be very, very simple, because for every if they get to basically if they get to define what all the questions are, right? They could already have predetermined, cooked up, ready made answers to the questions, right? So they basically they imagine this world, however conscious this is, I don't really care. They oversimplify everything because that makes them look like, seers. Oh wow, they're so smart. They have an answer to everything, right? No, they simply don't ask all the questions. That's the problem. So, yeah, this hypergamy real to reel it back in to where we were a few minutes ago? Yeah, sure, it is. But there's also this thing called hypogamy. Hypogamy, hypogamy, however the fuck you pronounce it, right? Like women will marry down, right? Yeah, they will. If a woman has enough money and money is not that important to her, why would she care how much money you got? Maybe there's something about you that she hasn't been able to find in all these, rich, higher social class, maybe spoiled, bratty, whatever the hell, pedantic men who thread their eyebrows and do their nails. Maybe she doesn't want any of that. Maybe she wants a fucking lumberjack that's gonna toss her around in the bedroom a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, and I know these guys. They paint themselves as these like manly men, and they talk about evolution and the caveman and being like this natural strong dude. But when it's all artificial, the way they get their muscles, if they do, is in the gym, and a lot of them ain't even got that. So come on, it's It's not functional strength, in other words, right? If you catch my drift. So, running out of coffee. One last sip. Let's try to wrap this up. You know, a lot of what they say is hypocritical, self-refuting, contradictory. These Manosphere dudes, they need to create a certain environment to where they appear, super knowledgeable. They have to oversimplify everything. They have to make women seem as this way and no other way. And because, if they narrow down the number of problems, or they bring a lot of nuance, they reject nuance and say that, well, this problem, they take, how do I do this? They take a variety of problems, for example, and lump them into as if it was one. And he does this very, very well. I don't know how conscious it is. Again, I'll give you an example in just a second. Cooper, right? Well, basically, long fucking story short, if the only tool you got is a hammer, then every problem is a nail. Or if you could convince enough people that most of their problems are nails, right? Then whatever limited toolbox you may have, where there's just a hammer and maybe some scissors, right? Then you will appear like someone who has a solution to everything, right? This harkens back to not asking the questions and pretending like you have all the answers. So, for example, when he talks about hypergamy, Cooper, he talks about, in some instances, well, the woman's not satisfied with you, right? Because some other guy at work is better looking than you, or he compliments her better than you, or there's something about that guy that she desires, right? So he calls that hypergamy. Well, that's not hypergamy. That's perhaps, right, her not loving you for whatever reason, or you fucking up, not satisfying her, maybe in bed or whatever, right? There's some kind of a problem in the relationship. And so if your woman is looking to find a solution to that problem outside of the relationship, and it has nothing to do, as he even said it, with social status, right? He just chalks it up to hypergamy. And that's not hypergamy, right? But if he just chalks it up to hypergamy, the guy that's fucking up, let's say, and maybe it's not even his fault, but let's say you're fucking up as a dude in the relationship, right? Instead of getting to the bottom of the problem, why it is that your woman isn't happy with you, right? Cooper just tells you, oh, it's hypergamy. She was programmed like this by evolution. There's nothing you can do about it, right? Just chase excellence, bro. Go to the gym, do your hair, like get a hair transplant, whatever you got to do so that other dudes think you're pretty, right? Dude, I mean, I'm not saying there are no superficial women out there, but there are so many women that date down, at least in my subjective opinion, insofar as looks go, more so than dudes. Dudes seem to be a lot more interested in looks than women. And I'm not saying women aren't interested in that either, but a lot of that seems to be brainwashing as of late anyway. Magazines, media, blah, 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 this and that. I mean, there's like this. I won't even get into an example, but suffice it to say, there are, let's say, a bunch of 6 or 7s men, average looking men, that are able to pull 8, 9s, and 10s sometimes. And they don't even have a lot of money. So, what is that, Richard Cooper? Why is that? Why is that? It does happen. But they reject anything that disagrees with the worldview. They act as if it didn't exist. Because if they had to ask these tough questions for which they don't have answers to, because evolution, right? It doesn't make any sense on their worldview. They would just look like a bunch of dummies. So, yeah, hypergamy exists, but then there's also people marrying down in social class too. It has to happen. Logically, it has to happen. Otherwise, most people will never find a mate. Most women will never be happy with uh, their man. And in the Western world, I know divorce and all of that is a big problem in other places as well. But like, there are also lots of people who are satisfied. They find enough meaning in their relationships where they don't have a problem. They're happy, if you want to put it that way, right? That also happens. There are women who marry down in social class and they're happy. There are men who aren't, studs like Richard Cooper, pulling way better women than he ever could. Well, why is that? He doesn't have answers for this. And they don't even have the money. So it's this guy's worldview is generally jaded because of something that happened to them. And it seems to me that they interpret reality through their very, very subjective lens that where they don't allow other viewpoints. They as soon as you disagree, oh, you're a beta, you're this and that. They put you in this box and they discard you, right? They need to create. This is like a lot like medicine, right? Like doctors out there. If they were to solve the problem, if they were to cure the disease, they'd be out of a fucking job, right? So they have to perpetuate. And again, I'm not saying this is conscious, but this is just how some people tick. If they were to really have the solutions for the problems as they see them, then eventually, right, they would be less and less popular because they would be solving the problem. But they have to perpetuate the problem, right? They're telling men to go out there and bang chicks, right? Pump and dump. While they're telling women to not do that, right? So they're trying to create this environment, or they're fostering this environment maybe, where women are just they want men to just chase ass and for women not to give it to them that easily, right? Because if all the women out there are just slutty and they give it up to anybody, then all of a sudden your theory of like these betas doesn't work. Because look, the betas are getting laid too. All the ugly dudes are pulling better chicks than you. What's going on, bro? Right? So they're literally telling women to be hypergamous, and they're telling men to be that's kind of an object of women's attention, because it's this like self reinforcing worldview, right? This is how the world is. It has to be this way. Everybody fall into place, and I keep a job. It's just so dumb. It's so simplistic. You gotta be so ignorant and naive to fall for this. And most of the guys that do, or jaded, right, are young men who, for whatever reason, struggle to get it, right? And trust me, we all do. That's part of growing up. Or these men who screwed up for whatever reason, right? And they don't want to take responsibility for their screw ups, like Sferia. And they just blame women, right? Women blame men, men blame women. Excellence isn't like necessarily looking at how you could be, how to find the right kind of mate for you, right? That excellence is just being a peacock, basically, with a lot of money, so that you could bang a bunch of chicks. That's excellence. And women are just sluts. They love bad boys. They only go for the attractive guys with a lot of money. It's just, what world do you live in? Right? That does happen, right? Obviously, that also happens. But there's so many examples to the contrary that are that debunk these nonsense theories. Sorry, my dogs had to chase someone. Anyway, and I guess I'm rambling a little bit, but I guess I have a lot to say, and maybe there will be, as I stated, more videos on this. Maybe getting into more detail. This idea that like women and men are this way because evolution and we're all pre-programmed, blah 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 blah. Well, you guys should know how I feel about evolution. It's just a theory. None of these things have ever been proved, right? Such as speciation, we've never observed any of this, right? Like insofar as we're concerned, it doesn't exist. And then from that follow all these, I guess, educated guesses that, because there's just a whole bunch of conjecture there, right? Like, well, reality looked so and so back in the day when men would drag women by their hair and into the cave, right? Like this is cartoonish Flintstone nonsense. Like, how do you know this, right? This people just made this shit up, right? They just made. How would they know this? They don't know this. They just assume, oh, well, we were more like animals, right? We were. Okay, how do you know this? You don't, right? It's all just conjecture and assumptions, and they build these worldviews based on that. Well, women, I can't think of any concrete examples, but I'm sure you've heard it all. A woman wants to protect her young, she needs a provider, and there's a lot of truth in that, right? But everyone's evolutionarily programmed basically to be this way and only this way. And this is why women do this and men do that. Okay, but if we're so programmed by the same evolution, right? How do you have alphas and betas? Like, what's the, And I'm not saying that they don't have explanations for this, but it's all reverse engineered bullshit, right? They run into a problem. Let's say my question, well, okay, if we're all programmed to be this way, right? Alphas spread their seed and beta bucks, they don't get to do that. How come there's so few alphas out there, at least according to you? And all of that is bullshit anyway. How come there's so many alphas out there, but most men are betas and whatever else, right? How is it that they're outnumbering the alphas if the alphas are the ones spreading their seed, right? And everything is evolutionarily based and coded in your genes. Like this, the worldview doesn't make any sense. How is it that if alphas are most successful at spreading their seeds, how is it that most men, according to you, in the world aren't alphas, right? See, but these are the difficult questions that you cannot reverse engineer an answer to, right? But once you commit to this certain ideological worldview, you have to do that, or these questions will make your worldview fall apart. So whatever the answer might be to that question, if anyone has ever asked it, I don't know, right? But whatever the answer is, it's predetermined by, it's just reverse engineered, right? And the more you ask these questions, the more you're going to expose these guys as just kooks who are grifters and don't have any clue what they're talking about. They just committed to a certain ideology, and anyone who starts asking certain questions, it gets, put in the beta box or whatever, or like, you're happy with the woman, oh, you're a beta, I guess. You know what I mean? And so on and so forth. So, if you start questioning a lot of the things that they say, you'll realize that it's just a bunch of bullshit. But it makes them sound, scientific. They like to like pull out certain studies here and there that supposedly say something about something. And maybe we'll look at some of these studies and see if there's, but basically they interpret everything through the lens that they possess, uh, with blinders on, right? Their ideology and worldview basically colors everything, right? They don't. Their worldview isn't created by considering everything and asking questions. The worldview comes from however they feel in any particular instance, or because of their life experience or their inability to be happy with the woman in a relationship, right? Having been divorced or whatever. And instead of actually looking at oneself and seeing where they went wrong, it's the system, it's evolution, it's all these other things that you cannot control that are the problem. All you have to do to to succeed is make a lot of money, go get your nails did, hit the gym here and there, and gather around with your boys at the bathhouse and slap each other's asses. I mean, I'm fucking around a little bit, but like, it's the manosphere is pretty gay, guys. It's pretty gay. Bisexual for now, anyway. So it's a whole bunch of pseudoscientific garbage. Like this whole idea that there are alpha males and betas. It's just like, okay, where did you get this from? Right? Wolves? We're not wolves. Okay? I hate to break it to you, but we're not animals. Not look, I get it. You could, depending on how you define an animal, you could say that, right? And I know science and evolution says that we're monkeys, right? Just don't call black people that. Okay. But what the hell is an alpha, right? What is that? You got all these dudes talking about how they're alphas and they're in charge and this and that. And they're so awesome and amazing because they bang a bunch of chicks, which is probably a lie anyway. And somehow that makes them alpha, right? When, in my opinion, I mean, for a lot of men, in order to be able to bang a bunch of chicks, you got to be manipulative in a way, right? Like, that's how a lot of men do it, right? They tell the women they love them. They play the game, right? They manipulate women to give them sex, right? That's someone like Richard Cooper will turn around and say that that's beta. That's what betas do. That's what women do. They manipulate, right? Okay. Anyway, alpha, beta, that's all a bunch of pseudoscientific bullshit, right? You could have an alpha, like if we're looking at wolves, for example, you could have some wolf that's an alpha, right? That's eventually going to get his ass whooped by another younger wolf, and what he becomes a beta all of a sudden, right? If he doesn't get killed, if he's somehow allowed to survive, he won't be allowed to mate with any of the female wolves or anything, right? Probably get killed anyway. But like, let some other situation. Let's say the pack leader gets whooped by the up and coming new guy and gets to survive but not mate anymore. He just becomes a beta. But I thought this was like evolution, predetermined by evolution and genetically coded and blah 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 blah. Like how can you go from alpha to beta? And then the audience that Cooper appeals to, well, they have to be betas, right? Because alphas already got their shit figured out and they don't need him, right? They're like him, they're competing with him. So he's appealing to all these betas, presumably trying to turn them into alphas, while at the same time saying that, well, it's predetermined and evolution and shit, right? It doesn't make any sense. There's no such thing, ladies and gentlemen, as alphas or betas. Are there certain characteristics or modes of behavior in particular situations that could be defined as, well, that thing he did right there was alpha? Yeah, sure, but that same alpha put in a different situation could very well be a beta. It really depends, right? You're not going to be the boss everywhere you go. It's just not going to happen, right? And for a lot of you men out there, like, sometimes, okay, when it comes to you and your woman, sometimes you're gonna have to swallow your pride. I'm not gonna say, because it's bullshit. I don't like that language, right? I'm not gonna say you have to be a beta, but like there's situation. I mean, there's a lot of truth to, happy wife, happy life. There's certain things where you're gonna have to swallow your goddamn ego and listen to what somebody else has to say and take their suggestions on board, right? Like it should be a partnership if that's what you want, right? Does that make you a beta? Right? Because you guys aren't doing exactly what you want and you're compromising? Come on, man. This sort of attitude that you're just an alpha, that's exactly what destroys relationships, right? So this like alpha male shit, that's a bunch of pseudoscientific garbage, man. It doesn't exactly exist. In some situations, you're going to be the leader, but that's probably going to be based on merit, not evolution, right? You could convince people that they should do things your way because you have a certain track record. Maybe you're intelligent enough, and if they followed you in the past and it worked, well, it would be stupid for them not to, right? Or you use arguments to convince them that your way is the right way. But if you hear arguments to the contrary that are convincing because you're honest and confident, well then maybe you're going to have to compromise or maybe even follow someone else. And that might be a woman or another man that's half your size, that has a brain twice the size of yours, right? Like, none of this makes any sense. This alpha, beta, like, I get it colloquially, I get what people are saying, but there's no such thing as alphas and betas in real life, okay? Like, these are not absolute terms. It doesn't really exist. It's a bunch of pseudoscientific drivel, you know? So, and this whole idea that, like, oh, look at that guy's muscles, he's an alpha. If we're really thinking about that, like, you think someone like Hitler, right? I mean, he looked like a beta, but I mean, look at what he was able to do, right? Look at Bill Gates. He looks like a damn beta, and Richard Cooper will tell you he is, right? But he's got more control than most people in this world. The 99.999% of this world, he's got more control, more power than them, right? But he looks like a goddamn beta. He talks like a damn beta. Richard Cooper could knock him out with his pinky finger, right? And it makes him happy to call someone like Bill Gates a beta, even though he has to submit to Billy's whims begrudgingly, right? It doesn't make any sense, man. None of this shit makes any sense. This Manosphere, there's a lot of truth there, but these dudes are just grifters, man. The whole sphere is full of hypocrisy, full of, fruity guys, in my opinion. Full of, if I am to use their ideology, their terminology, it's full of betas try to outdo each other, basically. Okay? Because no alpha male is going to depend on a whole bunch of betas, right, for his well-being and income and all this other stuff, right? No alpha male, if that thing exists, is going to need the support of all these tens of thousands of betas or their validation, right? No alpha male would ever need any of that if such a male even exists, right? So, and if you're so alpha, how did you get fucked over by a woman? Oh, I was a beta, but now I'm an alpha because evolution. Get the fuck out of here, man. None of this shit makes any sense. Well, that's not fair, but there's enough contradictions there. There's enough hypocrisies. There's enough pseudoscience. There's enough just grifting and just asking a few right questions at the right time exposes all of that for me anyway, to prove that the entire movement is bad, guys. It's bad. I'm not saying it couldn't be something good necessarily, but the way it stands right now, it's trash, man. This is garbage. Now, if you need a friend in misery and this guy appeals to you because he strokes your ego and tells you that it's not your fault, it's her fault. I mean, if that's what you need in life right now, I mean, how is that getting better? What does that have to do with becoming a man, right? Taking responsibility. No, come on, man. And I know Cooper will say, you should take responsibility as a man, while at the same time he blames women. And it's just a whole bunch of contradiction, hypocrisies. There's definitely truth there, but ultimately, this ideology is very destructive And in my opinion, it's just another one of those paths, right? Veganism is another one, for example. Antinatalism, only fansism, whatever the hell, right? There's a whole bunch of different paths that lead people to the same end, right? And that's the New World Order, basically, right? Where everyone is neutered, subservient, enslaved, fighting amongst each other, and it's just order out of chaos, right? Not the kind of order that will serve any of us. And the chaos that gets us to this order is probably just as bad. So, yeah, this guy is not a force of good in this world. I'm sorry. I know he appeals to a lot of men because, he comes across as confident. He's got a deep enough voice, enough muscle mass, and he simplified the world enough, oversimplified it to where people feel like they get it. You know what I mean? But come on now. We're too small brained to be able to get it. This is what you have to realize. You're not going to be able to get it. You're not going to be able to solve women. You're not going to be able to understand, like, fully, right? Women, they don't even understand themselves half the time, right? A lot of things you're just going to have to, like, roll with the punches, go with the flow, and you're not going to get answers to, okay? So I know he provides a lot of comfort for a lot of people, and because he seems to have the solutions and stuff. But in order for him to do that again, for 100th time already, in order for him to be able to appear as if he was so educated and smart and had all the answers and solutions, he has to, in the first place, oversimplify the problem, right? And that in and of itself is just a trap, right? So that's it, man. I'm not I'm not trying to imply intent or any sort of malice from any of these guys, because they're probably just as lost. And it's like positive reinforcement, right? They say something, they put something out there, it gets a lot of views, people agree with them, and they think like, well, I must be right, and then they just go with that, right? Because it feels good for them too, and you know they get that serotonin boost, whatever it may be, and they just roll with it because it works. It makes them money. People look up to them. It boosts their ego, so on and so forth. So I'm not saying they're like trying to destroy people's lives or destroy society, but ultimately that is what they're doing. And fuck, I think I've rambled on long enough, but this is just what it is, man. If you got a problem with that, I couldn't give two shits. That's my piece. There probably will be more some point. Thanks for listening, considering, commenting, blah, 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 blah. Take care.